the blame on me, boy. Put the blame on me.
Just context for those that voted for it, who were watching the review and may be pissed off that we're just not like gushing over it. It's in context we don't like it. If you made me watch like some of the like, real schlocky film noirs that were just like, in public domain and have poor quality, then I watch Gilda. I say, oh my God, Gilda's so awesome. Comparing Gilda to some of the best film noirs ever made, it's not that great. So I just want to give that context so people don't get pissed off and then just cut off their.
Yes, don't hate us.
Yes, please. So it starts off with we see Glenn Ford. I'll just refer to him as Ford instead of Johnny for this review, which is his character's name. And we establish that he's like this low-life gambler who's ripping sailors off, and he's using like loaded dice, so he's cheating to win. The guy who's robbing him, the narration kind of implies it's because he cheated, but in the scene you didn't really get that context. So maybe they added that context with the narration a little bit. And then we see Balin comes in and saves him. We get our first glimpse of the homosexual undertones of the movie. Now, as you mentioned, you didn't really see it the first time you watched it, or when you previously watched it before you researched it. I actually did see it when I previously watched it, but I wasn't looking for it. So when I saw it, it just confused me. I'm like, this seems kind of gay. That's what I was thinking in my head. Because that's without reading anything about it. I just kept thinking, like, why is this movie so homoerotic? That's why I just kept. But then when I read about it, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense now. So when I read about it, supposedly it was not intentional. If the homoerotic undertones of this movie were not intentional, sell me the Brooklyn Bridge, because this is the gayest movie I've ever seen. And I've seen Paris is Burning. I've seen all the John Waters movies. I've seen Brokeback Mountain. I've seen a lot of gay movies. This is the gayest movie I've ever seen.
In more ways than one.
I think it's just like they're beating you over the head with it. And in the first scene, you see the phallic symbol showing you like, hey, this is my schlong. And it's dangerous because it's like, because it has that sword on it. So it's like, do you really want this, And in that first exchange, he was like, Glenn Ford said, hey, man, you live a gay life, don't you? You're a lucky man. He literally said gay in the first exchange they had together.
You must say the gay life. You must say the gay life. You must say the gay life.
But I'll turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on the setup of the movie?
Well, the setup, when you explain it that way, makes it a little more obvious, yeah? Especially with, coming in as a guy watching this, maybe you would pick up on that faster. I don't know. Yeah. But I just did not. I can't explain it. Mm-hmm. It just seemed to me that he had some kind of desire to have power, over this guy. That was my impression, of course, and it was just like the first time I saw it. And I just, I saw it as this kind of power struggle between them over Gilda and
mm-hmm. What do you think of the introduction of the two characters? Did it feel natural? Because it seemed like he came out of nowhere. Like
yeah, he does kind of come in like a convenient deus machina or whatever out of that particular situation. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he's there doing that is a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's hanging around on, what is it, like a waterfront or something?
Yeah, something that
So, I mean, I should have thought that's a little bit weird.
I'm not saying that that's a place where like gay men would go, but substitute it with like a truck stop bathroom.
Exactly.
It's like once you like you look at the metaphors, it's like, yeah, like why else would you be there? It's kind of like when George Michael, like a rich guy, was in that truck stop bathroom. I think it was like the late '90s when he was caught, and then he came out as gay. George Michael's a singer, but yeah, it's like this rich guy. Like, why are you at like this like gas station or truck stop bathroom? I forget which one it was, because that's a place where gay men go to, like, you know, do things. Especially if they're married or like they're not openly gay.
Exactly.
And after that, he came out as gay. It's like, yeah, why else would a rich guy be like in this like seedy location unless he's like looking for like a John or something, or I don't know.
I don't know what he was looking for there. You know, it was like, is he there to? What reason is he there for? You? I didn't think about that when I first saw it, but now, you know, that we're talking about it, it's got me thinking. It's like, oh, that was like a clue that I didn't even notice. There's something a little weird about this guy hanging around so well dressed on the waterfront, hanging out with this gambler, you know, this so-called cheat, this low life. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think he enjoys slumming it.
Who knows? Okay, then we switch to the bathroom scene where we get the bathroom attendant, who's there, you think initially as comic relief, but then he plays a big role at the end of the movie as well. There is a joke in there, and I wasn't sure if it was a cocaine joke or a brown nosing joke.
The spot is not on your nose yet.
Is that a coke joke? Like you know, people do coke are always like rubbing their noses to make sure there's no residue there. Or if he's saying like he's gonna brown nose to the boss, I didn't know what that was. I think it was like a coke joke. I could be wrong.
Really?
I'm not sure.
I thought
I'm not
maybe
sure
it was
how
a brown
big...
nosing joke.
But then, like, the reason I wasn't sure is because how big was coke back then? I normally think of coke from the 80s. I don't know if like cocaine was big back then. And then if it's brown nosing, how does he know that he knows the boss? Because he hasn't entered the casino yet. He hasn't showed the card yet. Like, how would that guy know there's any connection with him and the owner? You know, so I didn't know where they were going with the joke. It was funny, but it went over my head. Yeah, but like I said, we get the bathroom attendant. He was there for a lot of comedy relief.
Hey, who's she? A harpy. How would you classify me?
Peasant.
Ford, you know, obviously, like we said, takes the invite, immediately spots that like there's a cheat or a crook there, and then that comes back later on as well. He talks about himself in the narration as being like this really smart guy who gets himself, like he makes himself out to be like this clever criminal, but we see him cheat twice, and we see him get caught twice. How clever are you if you cheat both times we see you cheating, we see you get caught? Because he literally says, like, I know the exact time to walk away.
As usual, I made my own luck. And I knew just when to stop letting it ride.
Hey, Bud. The director wants to see you.
Wait a minute.
But then he walks away and he gets caught and he gets beat up. It's like, no, you don't. You clearly don't. It's like with most narration, it doesn't really make sense, you know? I don't know. Like, how do you say, yeah, I know exactly when to walk away? And they're like, hey, come with us. And then they beat his ass. It's like, something's not adding up there. So
yeah,
he goes in, gets beat up by Balance guys. And then Balance says, okay, like, I'll hire you under one condition. There has to be no women in your life, which is, again, like, why?
Glaringly.
Who would even bring that up? Like, what does a woman in my life have to do with anything about me helping you run this casino?
This I must be sure of, that there is no woman anywhere.
There's no woman anywhere.
He's like, there absolutely has to be no women in your life. And I don't know. But what are your thoughts of everything that happened at this point so far in the movie?
Well, it's making a hell of a lot more sense. When you explain it like this, all I can say is, I think you're right.
Oh God. Maybe
But
you're
I
right.
do
Maybe
like
it's like
Glenn
as a
Ford.
guy. Maybe it's as a guy. Maybe you're right. Maybe because I'm a guy, I'm noticing this stuff. But I'm telling you, man, it's just like
Wow.
it's so gay. It's and again, not in a bad or good way. I'm just saying it's like
Not that
it's
there's
so
anything
overt.
wrong with that.
To give a Seinfeld reference, of course.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's just like, wow, like I don't know. But it's
It
almost
is.
like it's distracting in a way. It's like it's not subtle. It's not adding to the storyline. It's just like, you know,
It does seem to somewhat overwhelm with all of that.
yeah. Yeah.
There's I was reading something that said that Gilda is supposed to be confusing.
Hmm.
So maybe that was the point. They're really pouring this on and making you wonder what is going on? What's
Yeah.
with these guys?
I read online that the script wasn't finished when they started shooting. And
Hmm.
that's why like a lot of this stuff seems confusing, and it made it seem like even people that part of the production were like, hey, this is the reason it doesn't make sense, is because we started shooting before we finished the script, which reminded me of another love triangle that didn't make a lot of sense. Was Casablanca. Obviously
Uh-huh.
Casablanca, one of the all-time great movies, but that's another movie where they were like rewrites and writing it as they were shooting. And that's the reason why the love triangle came off a little confusing in Casablanca, because they didn't know like who she was going to end up with and like how it was going to end while they were shooting it. And when you think about it in that context, like, maybe it makes a little bit more sense. Like they didn't know where they were going, but I don't know. Like, I don't get how Gilda plays a role in this love affair with these two men, but we'll get to that when she makes her first appearance. But she really comes off as like a third wheel in this whole movie. So,
She does, yeah.
yeah. Any other thoughts on this section of the movie before we move on?
No other thoughts.
Okay. So then he goes to his house, they have an exchange, and he hires him obviously after that exchange. He hires him, he works his way up to be Balin's number one guy at the casino that Balin owns. And then Balin eventually invites him to his house. And then he's like, in this scene, I didn't actually count because as I was watching it, I wasn't thinking I would hear this word so much. And then halfway into the scene, I'm like, Jesus, they keep mentioning that a lot. I didn't bother rewinding it to count how many times they said it, but they said surprising like 80 times in this one scene. He's like, I have a surprise to show you. You hear a woman's voice? Yes, I'm surprised
Oh.
to hear a woman's voice in your house. I'm married. Does that surprise you? Yes, I'm very surprised that you're married. They kept harping on like how surprised he was to hear a woman's voice, to hear that there's a woman there, to hear that he's married. It's just like, and they just kept saying, man, this is so surprising. Kept mentioning that over. It was just like, my God, how many times are they going to let us know that we should be surprised that he's with a woman?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
thank you for telling us that we're supposed to be surprised
but
so that we can show our proper shock when this woman comes on screen.
I think part of it maybe in their mind, it's like, oh, we're setting up like the big shot of Rita flipping her hair. But for me,
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, it's surprising because you're gay. You don't like women. That's why it's super surprising that you would be with a woman. Like, you have a beard? Really? It's like, I didn't think you'd have a beard, but okay. Let's say she's your wife.
Quite a surprise to hear a woman singing in my house, eh, Johnny?
That's quite a surprise.
I wanted to keep it as a surprise.
Was it a surprise, Mr. Farrell?
It certainly was. You should have seen his face.
Did you tell him what I'm doing here, Belle?
No, I wanted to save that as a surprise, too. Gilda is my wife, Johnny.
It's like, well, maybe it's supposed to be that, okay, like Rita flips her hair back. Well, she looks beautiful in the shot. It's iconic.
Gorgeous.
People who haven't seen the movie have seen that shot in montages or on YouTube or on GIFs. She looks amazing. But for me, again, the surprising stuff didn't make me think of Rita. It made me think that this guy has a beard and he doesn't like women And it's surprising that he would be with a woman because, dude, I thought you were gay. I thought we were a couple. What do you mean you're married? You know, it's like, I thought we were in a relationship together. That's how I saw it. But yeah, so it's obvious that like in their interaction in the movie, the one thing the movie does extremely well is the subtext where characters are saying one thing and meaning another. And
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, they do a really good job with that. And you can tell that they obviously know each other with Rita's character and I'll just call her Rita instead of Gilda, and Ford, Johnny. So Ford and Rita, they obviously know each other, but they're not flat out saying it. They're implying it. And I think that adds a lot to the scene. So what are your thoughts in that section of the movie?
Well, yeah, they kept saying things that let you know that they knew each other. And I kept wondering what happened that created this horrible rift between them, because she's so vehemently, do you know how much I hate you, Johnny? That sort of thing. It's like, wow, that much, huh? That you feel like you have to like spell it out for me? What is going on here? So that has always struck me as being very strange and confusing. But having said that, I thought it was odd, you know, when she's first introduced, you know, you said they kept saying how surprising it was. And I remember thinking, okay, so he doesn't expect to see a woman in the house because they previously said that they're going to keep women out of their lives. That's what confuses him? Or is it the previous relationship with Gilda that confuses and upsets him? Because it was like, okay, there's that, and then there's a relationship with this guy. And it was just like, really, what the hell? So I was just kind of left going, is this about business? I mean, is that why he is so was so vehemently against women? That's kind of what I thought when I first saw it. But I just never really had a clear idea of what created the relationship between the man and Gilda, between the casino owner and Gilda. But your explanation makes sense. I mean, if he's using her as a beard, I mean, then that totally
That's
makes
just
sense.
my theory.
Then.
It doesn't that's true.
But it would make more sense.
Yeah.
See, I think they were having such a terrible time with the Hays Code on this one that they couldn't outright say these guys were having a relationship.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes this movie so confusing, I think.
I'm confused as how they were handling it. Because like you said, if the confusion with the movie is that they couldn't tell the gay story they wanted to, then it makes sense. Everything makes sense. But if you believe them at face value and said that they weren't aiming for that, then I don't know what they were aiming for. Otherwise, it's a really confusing movie because the setup is so interesting, but nothing goes anywhere. You mentioned like the relationship, like what makes Rita hate him so much? What makes him hate Rita so much? They never tell us that. They never really get into like why these two like broke up, why they hate each other.
Exactly. That was my reaction to the whole, relationship between them. You know, all that sniping between them kind of made me feel the same way. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah. Whether it's the script was being written as they shot, maybe that was the confusion. Maybe it's the Hays Code hampered them and their story became like so jumbled up because they had to keep altering it. Who knows? But it doesn't. There's no payoff. Initially, it's intriguing, like why do they hate each other? But when there's no answer, it just becomes frustrating. It's like, where's this going?
I thought we agreed that women and gambling didn't mix.
My wife does not come under the category of women, Johnny.
I could have made a mistake.
You did. Don't make it again.
It starts already.
There's a lot of fighting at this point because now it's a true love triangle now that Rita's involved. And it's it's so unclear, like who are you jealous of in this? You know, it's like it doesn't seem like either of you are jealous.
I know.
It's like you're jealous of, like, none of them really want Rita. They're just like bickering back at each other, you know. And she's very much a third wheel as a character as well, because she doesn't really get a lot of screen time until later in the movie. So it's just like them bickering back and forth about her and about their
Exactly.
relationship. And it's just like, oh man, what's going on here? Like, what are we aiming for here, guys? So yeah, I think that's what carries a lot of the movie too, is the back and forth between the three characters about the relationships and like, you know, who's in love with who and all that sort of stuff. And another thing I thought was interesting, because this affected women, and it still does to a lesser degree in Hollywood, is ageism. Because Rita, there was a movie she did with Frank Sinatra. I don't remember the name of it, but Frank was actually older than her significantly, and they thought she was too old to play Frank's girlfriend. And then Frank pushed for her to be in the movie. I thought it was in, and because Frank was basically probably sleeping with, he was sleeping with every woman in Hollywood if you read the books about it. So he had an affair with who was Bogart's wife, Bacall. The minute like Bogart died, he started having an affair with Bacall. So he was just like a notorious womanizer. But yeah, he forced her into the movie. But ageism was affected a lot of women back then, and especially for Rita, who was someone who was basically, her looks was like 90% of her appeal. And when she kind of aged out a little bit, like that really affected her. And there was an interesting line in this where she was saying, she was talking about Ford's character with her husband, Balin, saying, oh, he's a young kid. And I'm like, really? Young kid? And then I searched online. I'm like, wait a minute, he's 2 years older than her when they made this movie. Like, why is Rita calling him a young kid, you know? So it just reminded me just like the ageism that goes on in these movies, where it's just like okay for like a guy to be with like a much younger woman, but like if they're the same age, like the woman has to basically act like the guy's a kid. I'm like, oh, come on. Where are we going with this, you know?
He's a boy.
Boys have the darndest way of growing up, Ellen. Almost when you're not looking.
But I'll be looking.
It's just like a lot of sexual tension in the middle part of this movie. How did you think that was handled, and what did you think about a lot of those scenes that happened in that part?
In general, I thought it was handled somewhat confusingly. As I said, all the arguing really started to get on my nerves, and I really wanted a clear answer to why these people were so fractious. And but I think one of the things I like about the movie are the things that don't relate to the love triangle, actually. So to me, like, this love triangle was just there, and it was just like, okay, we got to get through this. And there's something going on with the casino owner and Tungsten, and this whole thing he's involved with overseas that I thought was way more interesting, that they didn't spend a lot of time on. That because they were so busy exploring this relationship between the three of them, that didn't really interest me all that much after a while, because it's like, you're not doing anything with this. Nobody's going anywhere. Oh, if
you thought that at this point in the movie, you had another hour and 20 minutes of nothing but the love triangle.
I know, that's the thing. It was like, I just don't get it. What do people see in this movie? Although I will say that I like the part where she sings with the ukulele.
Yeah, the singing stuff is nice. Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, the way they threw in that part, because for once I thought, oh, you know, I really like her. You know, there's a part of her that I can feel empathy for. She just seems vulnerable at that point, you know?
Well, to talk about Rita a little bit more then, since you brought that up. So she grew up in a dancing household. So dancing was a big part of like her talent. So that dancing stuff was great. She actually learned how to sing for the movie, but it's only the acoustic singing scene that she actually sings. The other stage stuff towards the end was all dubbed over by a professional singer. She actually later in life got Alzheimer's.
Yes.
and it started at 42, so it started really early for her.
Sad.
Yeah, so it's kind of like sad. I mean, dying is, there's nothing fun about dying. We all got to die at some point. But to me, Alzheimer's is kind of a really sad way to go, because before you die, like you're dying, like we're all kind of dying, but like you're dying in a mental way, because you're forgetting like all of your experiences and who you are as a person when you have Alzheimer's. And to start getting that at 42, that really sucks. So
That does.
and she died at 68, which in 87 I guess wasn't that young, but it still sounds a little bit young for today's standards at 68, you know. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. She was married a bunch of times. One of her first husbands actually helped push her to get signed with Columbia. She married Orson Welles at one point. Interesting enough, she had a kid shortly before they shot this, and which she looks great for someone who recently had a kid, and she had to wear something around her waist to like hold her stomach in because of that. So you don't really see her midriff a lot in the movie. She ended up marrying a prince after Wells, who was like a real womanizer, and their marriage didn't really go well. But like I said, 5 marriages. Another interesting thing about her marriage with Wells was that they were fighting a lot, and this was during one of their separations when this was being filmed, and there was talk about their separation and them seeing other people. And the head of Columbia, Harry Cohen, was worried that she would be having an affair with Glenn Ford. They did 5 movies total together, and so he bugged the dressing rooms and trailers and stuff like that, any place they would be, so he could hear what was going on. But the actors knew because they were tipped off. And then the movie she worked on after this, the year later, with Wells, I think they were basically done at that point, even though they were like, I guess their separation was handled in a way where they weren't bitter, because he helped her in custody battles for her kids, like after this, when the Alzheimer's kicked in and she was divorcing the prince. So they had a good relationship even while they were like, their marriage was falling apart, and they would put on like shows basically for the microphones, like fake arguments and things like that, because they knew they were being spied on while filming Lady from Shanghai as well. So a lot of interesting things about Rita. She actually fought for getting more money after she did this movie, because this was the height of her popularity. After this, she'd get 25% profit from her movies, net profit. Gross is what you really want, because they can always cook the books and make it seem like the movie didn't make much money. But this was the peak for her. Her career pretty much went down after this. Part of it was age, because Columbia basically signed Kim Novak to take her place. Around this time, you were contracted, so there were parts available, and it's just a matter of who were going to fill those parts. They signed someone younger to fill the roles they were going to give you. That really hampers your career a lot, and that happened with her. And honestly, like, I wasn't highly impressed with her acting in this movie, and this supposedly was one of her best acting performances. It may have been the script that failed her with the chemistry, but I didn't feel any chemistry with her and Ford. And I put some of that on her with her acting, and again, maybe part of it could have been the script, but I don't know, her looks, her dancing, her sex appeal, yeah, 10 out of 10 for all that. But for her acting, she doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah, part of that could be the fact that you had brought up the script hadn't been finished at the time they started filming. She might have been confused about what she was supposed to do.
That's a good point.
Because it is a confusing story anyway. And how is she supposed to find motivation without really understanding where her character came from or what's going on with these guys?
Yeah. The only reason I say some of it is on her, again, all of it can't be, because you're right. You're absolutely right with the script. But Ford still gave a great performance, even though the movie was confusing.
That's true. But he has a good part. He has a tough guy part.
He has a good part.
He has a nice tough guy part. I like that. Even if he's a bit dim sometimes, he's tough.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's all interesting. Another interesting thing about the movie, not necessarily about Rita, but Humphrey Bogart supposedly turned down the role that went to Ford, which
Huh.
isn't surprising because typically in
Yeah.
Hollywood, the minute a movie comes out, it's like, all right, who can we get for this? And they always aim for like the biggest star in that genre. So it's like for anyone to get a role in a film noir movie, chances are Humphrey Bogart probably turned it down first. So I didn't really view that as a big deal, but I thought it was worth
Hmm.
mentioning because it would have been interesting to see him in that part. Although he's not a handsome guy, he's not a particularly young guy. So I don't know how he would have played that. I don't know if how good of a fit he would have been as the Ford character. You know, it's just
Yeah, I don't see him being rescued on a waterfront by a guy in a duded up in a tux with
yeah.
a phallic symbol.
Yeah, it would have been odd to see him in that movie for a lot of reasons. Because again,
Yeah.
he's not a tough guy. He was short, he was thin, but he had that tough guy image. So him
Oh
getting
yeah.
rescued isn't something that you would accept for his character on screen. And again, he's him playing the young, handsome rival doesn't make sense either. A lot of it doesn't make
Exactly.
sense, so it's probably good he turned it down, even though he turned down a great movie. It would have been an odd fit. And you'd be remiss not to mention Shawshank Redemption with Rita Hayworth. Obviously, her
Oh yeah.
poster played a big part, and evidently, I think that the book was called Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, it was. I've actually read it. It's quite good.
Yeah, so yeah, you'd be remiss not to mention that when talking about Rita. But yeah, that's all the ancillary stuff that I wanted to mention. But I guess we can get back into the movie a little bit more. There's a lot of back and forth with the characters, a lot of the sexual tension stuff, which is really the heart of the movie. Like you said, you wanted to see more action, but a lot of the action was off screen. We don't really get to see a lot of the intriguing stuff. We just hear about it. There's one part, another again overtly homosexual undertone to another scene where the bathroom attendant talks to Ford's character and he's like, listen, Ballin's in trouble, Rita's in trouble, you can help one of them. And then he runs upstairs to go help Ballin because I think Rita was with some guy at the bar.
The beautiful one is at the bar. She'll probably have trouble.
Really? What kind of trouble?
A man. He's very good looking.
And then Ballin was upstairs with some Germans talking business.
Your source of income is in his office. He will probably have trouble.
What kind of trouble?
Also a man. Not so good looking.
And then, you know, the bathroom attendant informed him, like, which choice do you made? And he's like, bad choice. But of course, he goes upstairs for his boyfriend. And there he finds out a little bit more information that, like, hey, he's paying someone off. And then there's some intrigue now because initially, the guy he's paying off, you thought that, hey, maybe that guy was just like some gambler who's cheating. But no, he's not a gambler who's cheating. Like Ballin's actually letting him win as a payoff. They don't let us know what it's about, but it's more intrigue and you think it's going to go somewhere interesting. It doesn't really, but at the time it kind of comes off a little bit interesting. There's a little bit of mistrust, which causes a little bit more friction because he didn't know about the payoffs. He's like, why don't I know about this stuff? Like, you should be telling me. And again, there's more back and forth with Rita and everything else. Since we already talked about the back and forth, I guess we don't have to talk about that again. But again, it takes up more of the movie. But I guess we can introduce the other part of the movie you talked about with the other things going on. So this is post-World War II where most film noir took place. So you have to mention Nazis at some point. And they do in this movie. And there's the cartel aspect of it, which would have been interesting to see more of. So evidently, the guy he was paying off was selling like tungsten light bulbs to someone else, but Ballin didn't want him to do that, so he stopped paying him off. And basically, Ballin explained, like, listen, once we control tungsten, we can have a monopoly on it, and I'm the head of this cartel, and once we control all of it, then we can, like, you know, obviously, there's a reason monopolies don't exist because then once you control all of it, you can then set the prices at whatever you want just like the diamonds have no value if anyone can sell them because there's so much of it. But once you can control the supply of it, then you can make it as valuable as you want. And they were doing that with tungsten, which sounded like it would have been so interesting, but we don't really see much about it. So what are your thoughts of like up until this point in the movie when they introduced that stuff?
Well, I agree. I think it would have been interesting to explore that part of the story a bit more, but it comes off very tangential, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's just like, man, that's good stuff there. Like, let's see
That's
the bad
good
guys.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, technically, the only real bad guy we see is Balin, but really, he really becomes the bad guy late. Like, it's just like relationship stuff for the whole movie. He's not really the bad guy, unless you say, hey, I really want Rita and Ford to get together, and he's the bad guy because he's stopping that. But aside from that, there's no real bad guys in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's very unclear who you're supposed to root for in this movie.
Yeah. I was rooting for Balin and Ford to get together. I thought they made a good couple, honestly. Seriously, dude, because they had so much chemistry, you know?
But Balin, I don't know.
You didn't care for that one.
Oh, I didn't like Balin. He's just too full of himself.
But Ford puts him in his place.
Form a monopoly is
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. But all rich people are like that. All rich people are trying to form a monopoly.
Well, that's the thing, you know. I mean, it's like you have rich people, and you have rich people, and it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, rich people come off badly in the movies generally.
They do. They're looked on much better in real life than they are in the movies because once you flat out show like what they actually do to become rich and how they really are, it's just like, no, that's not a real likable person, you know? If you put like a real depiction of Trump on screen, they're going to be the bad guy. But half the world or half the US or more than half supports Trump. So it's like, you put that exact same character with a different name on screen, he's like Darth Vader, you know? So, or the Emperor Palpatine or something. So yeah, more back and forth with Rita. We see the part where you talked about where she's singing the acoustic song. It's actually her singing. There's more anger between them. Like it's more overt now. They're like yelling at each other, and she threw the guitar through the glass door, and they're fighting, and there's the tension kind of ramps up a little bit. So it gets a little bit more exciting from that standpoint. It doesn't go anywhere at the end, but if you took out the end and you just looked at it up until this point, was it intriguing you at this point, or did the arguing lose you with Rita and Ford?
I think the arguing lost me.
Even at this point in the movie?
Even at this point, yeah. Because I still don't feel like I know why you're arguing.
You thought at this point they should have given us more reasons, right?
More reasons, because I know you have told us over and over that you don't like each other. Now, would you please get to why? Give me a hint, just the tiniest hint as to why.
If you had to fill in the blanks yourself, what do you think it could possibly have been? One of them cheated, or like why would...
Well, one of the things I thought was maybe he had promised to marry her and dumped her or left her at the altar. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the confusing part.
That was one thing I thought about.
Yeah.
But there's no real indication of that. There's no... It's like they have some kind of shit. Did he cheat her? It's another thing that I thought about. Maybe he's a lowlife and he cheats at games of dice. So maybe he did something to con her. Mm-hmm. That was another thing that I thought about. But it's like not clear.
Yeah. Yeah, because like,
what do you think about that? I mean, do you think he might have cheated her or made a promise to marry that he broke?
I'm with you in that, like, there's no hint of it. There's no hint of
There really
anything.
isn't.
So anything
Yeah.
I say is just completely made up. Like I could say,
Exactly.
maybe like you said, he left her at the altar, but then the movie should have started off with him on the run, and then it could be like, I left you because I was on the run from such and such,
Right.
which would have been
Right.
easy. But there's no hint of that.
At
You could
least in
say,
Casablanca, you knew why Ilsa eventually breaks up, even though she's really stupid about not telling him sooner.
yeah, at least there's a reason, right?
At least there's a reason. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's no reason in this one.
No.
None that I can find. Everything is just imagined at this point.
Yeah. And you can say, well, maybe he cheated on her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, then she could say, why do you think I'm sleeping around with all these guys? Because you cheated on me and this is my way of getting back at you, you know?
Exactly. I mean,
but there's
she
no
could
hint
say
of that
something like-
either. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. Because that happens in real life. Like, someone will cheat on their spouse or their significant other, and then the other person will cheat, and then that person that initially cheated will, like, they'll accept it because it's like, I started this, it's my fault, and that there's that's interesting. But anything we filled in would be just made up out of thin air, so
Pretty much, yeah.
Balin's dialogue, I think, kind of ramps up a little bit. He has like a lot more insidious dialogue, especially when he's talking to Rita's character, as she starts becoming more of a part of the story at this point. He's talking about closing windows.
You're very excited about something tonight, my beautiful. Perhaps it's in the air. Perhaps you shouldn't have opened the window. Close it.
And he's essentially saying, close the window on whatever relationship you had because at this point he knows they had some kind of relationship.
There. See how quiet it is now. See how easily one can shut away excitement? Just by closing a window. Remember that, Gilda.
But he's just as confused as you and I are. He doesn't know what the relationship is about.
Oh, I want to have a look at you in your costume before you go. I see you're going to carry a whip. Have you warned Johnny so that he can also arm himself?
So he's like, listen, close the door in that relationship you had with Ford without actually saying it. And to me, this part of the movie is where, like, his character shines and the dialogue shines, because these characters they're telling each other things, but indirectly, the action kind of ramps up in that there is action at this point where we see some Germans come, they hold a gun to Ford, and then eventually we see one of the Germans are killed, and we're not sure who did it, but it's kind of implied that Balin does it. Balin eventually says that he does it, but it's implied, and that's interesting. They don't outright tell us. So there's some action with the Germans. The dialogue ramps up. We finally see Ford and Rita kiss, and then Balin runs off, and then we think that he dies. They don't even hold that suspense very long, because like the very next scene where the plane explodes, we see he's alive. So we have the singing scenes. Before we get to the end, we have the two famous singing scenes. The second one being Put the Blame on Mame, which it's a great performance. Even though it was dubbed, she did a good performance. It's a memorable. My rewatching of it, I was surprised that both of her big performances were so late in the movie. I think I was looking at, I was like, man, there's like 15 minutes left. Like, A, she hasn't been that big a part of the movie. She's definitely the third wheel by far. And B, she hasn't done any of the singing performances really yet, So a lot of her stuff is like really towards the end of the movie. And we see that after Balin is quote unquote dead, Ford's character takes over, runs the casino, runs the cartel, marries the guy's wife, basically takes over Balin's life. To me, he becomes the bad guy at this point. The guy is dead, and you take his wife and his business, and his illegal business, his legal business. You take over everything, and then he starts acting worse than Balin towards Rita. Like he has all of his men stalking her. He won't love her. He won't let her be with other people. he becomes like the real heel of the movie to me. Like he's really unlikable for this section.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I was like, why are they making him look so bad? He's gonna be the hero at the end. Like, why is he doing all this crappy stuff to her? You know?
To me, it's like an extension of everything that's gone before. It's like, okay, there's more animosity from him that I don't understand. And I did wonder when she was going to start doing that number. I was waiting for it. It was like, okay, I'm waiting for this number that everybody talks about. And finally it comes.
Yeah, really late. And I guess like what surprised me about how late it was is that I was like, oh yeah, in movies in these times, all the credits were at the beginning. So when I'm looking at 15 minutes, I'm thinking, man, 10 minutes of that's going to be credits. Well, oh yeah, these times the credits were at the beginning. So it's like they, you know, it was as late maybe. But yeah, I really didn't care for Ford's character at this point in the movie. I thought he was just like a real tyrant. And my thinking is not only like, is he a bad guy now, and he's worse than Balin, but also, why would Rita ever want to be with him at this point? Like, this is the guy you want to be with? There's nothing he can say at that point that you would think that she would want to be with him as a woman. It's like, he's domineering, he's controlling, he won't let you do anything, he's not affectionate. Like, what is appealing about him in any way that, and again, like, we don't know like why they broke up in the first place, but what we do know of them is that for the length of the movie, forget what happened before that we don't know about, for what we've seen of them, he hasn't done anything nice towards her. He's just progressively gotten much, 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 much worse as far as the way he treats her and controls her. So I didn't get it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's their whole relationship baffled me.
Yeah. So yeah, after the main song, we do get some more talk of the action, where the detective basically comes in and say, yeah, we arrested those guys, we locked them up, and we caught the other German. It's like, could we have seen any of that, please?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
The German has been arrested. He will give us the information we want. Now, all we want from you are the patents and the agreements bearing the signatures. Let me tell you why we must know who these signers are, Mr. Farrow. So they can be prosecuted legally for breaking the antitrust laws.
And they talk about the antitrust laws, which I know something about with antitrust and monopolies. I know some about it. But let's say people in 46 didn't know anything about it, or even people today don't know anything about it. That's stuff that like would be interesting. Antitrust, monopolies, corrupt businessmen, Germans. Like any of this stuff would have been good to see, instead of we get like a cop telling us in like a 1-minute dialogue scene about all this stuff. I'm like, fuck me, like show us some of that stuff. Take away one of those arguing scenes and give us one of those action scenes instead.
I know. If they had like Ford doing some poking around or something and actually getting involved in all that, that would have been more fun.
That's a good idea. He could have done that easily without changing much.
Exactly.
Instead of telling him, let him figure it out on his own. Like you said, let him poke around. And this is a film noir, supposedly. That's what film noirs do. There's a lot of detecting, you know. And
yeah, I love detective ones. Yeah, I mean, and this is like nothing but people talking and arguing and over relationships we can only guess at. So sorry, all you fans. I remember when I wrote the review for this one for my blog, at the very beginning, I think I'm probably going to get angry letters from this.
Oh God, I was terrible. I was so happy for people to vote. Everyone that voted is going to hate it.
Oh, don't hate us, please. But it's not a totally bad movie, okay?
No, it's not. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not. It's just disappointing. But I think
it has its disappointments. Yes.
Yes, that's an understatement. I think you summed it up pretty well when you said They're just showing us this relationship that we basically have to guess at. It's like this entire movie is about a relationship where we have to fill in the blanks. You're not going to show us any action. At
Talk
least
about audience participation. You provide the plot.
Why show us this romance that is unexplained? It's like, what the hell? Oh. I would accept the lack of action if at least things made sense and there was more backstory or
something to explain it, something to engage you in the relationship they were having.
Yeah.
To make you feel like you understood and could empathize with somebody.
Who do you empathize with? The domineering, controlling Ford who has his wife followed and chased, and do you follow the guy who's a Nazi sympathizer who's like running a monopoly, faked his own death, and now is coming back to kill everyone? Do you sympathize with Rita's character, who basically the whole movie just sleeps around with every guy in the movie, or tries to?
Yes, you can't cage me in, you know.
And they have
an animal. I cannot be kept caged, and yet she is.
Yeah. There's like one line where they try to say like, oh, she didn't really sleep with all those people, and this may have been a Hays Code line that they had to put in there. But one of the characters, I think it might have been either the detective or the bathroom attendant, was like, "You're such a fool, can't you see?" I think it was the detective, that this is all an act. She didn't really do any of those things at all. He might as well be talking to the camera, you know. She didn't really sleep with any of those people. It was just all an act. She really loves this guy.
Gilda didn't do any of those things you've been losing sleep over. Not any of them. It was just an act. Every bit of it. And I'll give you credit. You were a great audience, Mr. Farrow.
You know?
It was all a dream. It was all a beautiful dream. It was a nightmare.
Yeah. It's like they try to like whitewash all that stuff and like try to tell us like, oh, the whole movie while you were watching her with all these different men coming back drunk. Like, yeah, they were getting drunk and doing absolutely nothing together for hours all night. You know, it's like, come on. You know?
They were having deep philosophical discussions.
Yes, about life, and you know, it's just weird. Like, you're right. Who do you feel sympathy for? The slut, the controlling, domineering guy, the Nazi sympathizer. Like, I don't know.
It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle that's missing a few pieces,
to say the least.
But yeah, so there's the tacked on stuff. They whitewash her sleeping around. The detective kind of like gives Ford a break, saying, "Hey, I didn't see anything. I don't know anything. You know, even though it's my job, I'm gonna pretend it's not."
Yeah.
And then the worst part is we finally we get you know, her husband comes back, and we finally get to see, oh, we're gonna see some action. Balon's gonna try to kill them. He pulls out his phallic symbol.
I intended to kill you with this, Johnny.
No, this isn't gonna work.
But now it won't do.
He pulls out a gun.
I told you I'd be looking.
But then the bathroom attendant is the one that actually kills him. So it's just like, we don't even get to see like Ford kill him. No, there's no fight scene. There's no like, the bathroom attendant is, yeah. It's just like, okay, here it comes. It's like, why is he falling down? Why is he dying? What happened? You know, they're in front of him. Like, what happened to him? And the bathroom attendant.
Saved by the bathroom attendant.
It is the most underwhelming. Like, I don't know. What do you think? Maybe you saw it differently than I did.
No, actually, it's just so wonderful to hear somebody else say these things. Because I thought maybe it's me.
It's so
maybe somebody out there also feels the same way and has never been able to admit it. Maybe
I think we may be the only
freeing them up to say what they want about this movie.
I think hopefully we're not the only two that feel this way, and then like I don't
Oh, I
get a
don't
lot of
think
hate
so.
comments, but I don't know. I was very underwhelmed by this
Reasonable
movie.
minds can differ.
Yeah, yeah. There are two other things that happened towards the end. Nothing plot related. The smacks I think I read were real.
No, I'll get it anyway. I will. I'll get it. No, but I will. I will. I will. And then he married her.
And then when Rita smacked Glenn, she knocked out two of his teeth. I looked at the scene. I guess it's possible. Maybe he had bad dental work and she knocked out his bridge or something. But evidently
I
the
often
smacks were
wonder
real.
about stories like these.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Some
I
things were
wonder.
made up to sort of dramatize what was going on.
I think you might be onto something. Because again, maybe it's plausible if he had fake teeth. Maybe there was bad
Possibly,
dental
yes.
work, back in the 40s. But yeah, supposedly she smacked out two of his teeth. Supposedly he really smacked her. I don't know. I saw a real smack in a movie once. The Getaway, I think it was.
Oh, The Getaway, yeah. The
Yeah,
original one
yeah.
with Steve
68 or
McQueen.
something. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my God, yeah.
yeah.
Whoa, that
And
movie is intense.
yeah, and the director, God, he's one of my favorite directors.
Peckinpah?
Sam Peckinpah, yeah.
Mhm.
Peckinpah talked to McQueen off to the side to smack her in the seat. It's like really give it to her, and it's funny
My
because
God.
like it wasn't they weren't being fair to her because he really did smack the hell out of her, and that looked like a real smack. This I don't know. Saying this
Yeah.
was a real smack is a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, evidently in The Getaway they really smacked her. That's a real sordid movie because I think she was married to the producer, and if she had an affair with McQueen during the shooting of the movie, it's just a real sordid thing. But yeah, like you said, stuff is made up all the time about these movies, and I wouldn't be surprised if knocking out the teeth and the real smacking was, because unless he had really bad dental work, which maybe, but otherwise,
Possible.
yeah, it just seems like stuff to like build lore around it, because people may think there's action, but there really isn't. They may hear like, "Oh my God, Glenn Ford got his teeth knocked out making this movie." It's like people are like, "Man, there must be a lot of action in that movie." No, there isn't.
Rita Hayworth knocks out teeth. She's a knockout. Uh-huh.
There you go. That might be it. I could see that on a poster. Or what the equivalent of whatever the Star magazine or Inquirer magazine was of that day.
Yeah.
Breaking news: Rita Hayworth knocks out Glenn Ford's teeth. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, Debbie. I had 10 times more fun reviewing this movie than watching it.
Same here. Same here. I feel like I understand it better. I feel like somebody else doesn't understand it with me. And I'm hoping you out there watching this also don't understand it like we don't understand it.
You two kids love each other pretty terribly, don't you? I hate her. That's what I mean. It's the most curious love-hate pattern I've ever had the privilege of witnessing.